for their research paper. So what is it actually? So what is a literature review? So it is a comprehensive overview of all the knowledge available on a specific topic till date. So when a researcher decides to write or decides on a research topic, the first step the researcher has to take, the direction of conducting research, is to learn more about the previous research published on the topic, and this eventually translates into literature review when you write your research paper. Literature review, I can say, is one of the pillars on which your research idea stands, since it provides context, relevance, and background.
Sorry,
yes, yes, sir.
Hello, Sophia, ma'am. Actually, you're not sharing the screen, ma'am. Shall I share the screen from my end?
Yeah, please, please, sir.
Yeah.
So literature review is one of the pillars on which your research idea stands, since it provides context, relevance, and background to the research problem you are exploring. So go to the next slide, sir, please. Okay.
Which one, ma'am?
No, before that, I think it's the third slide.
Yeah.
Fine. So literature review happens to be a very significant part of a thesis, a dissertation, or a research paper. Almost every student needs to prepare such literature review while working on their academic papers. But it is not a piece of cake. Writing a literature review becomes challenging every day, as there are always new publications and research papers that they have to follow. So it is not very easy to decide which literature review you have to take for your research proposal, because every day new articles appear and you have to update. The researcher has to update himself or herself for the purpose of working on the research topic. Now, the next question is, what is the purpose of writing a literature review? The primary purpose of writing a literature review is to establish your opinion or research by showing the previous works of eminent writers on a particular topic. So this is the main idea or the main purpose of writing a literature review. That is, I repeat that point, by showing the previous works of eminent writers or researchers on a particular topic. The earlier works on the field provides support to your extensive research. So this is the main reason why literature written previously has to be referred, because it provides support to your extensive research. By doing so, the researcher also becomes familiar with the ideas, theories, technologies, and the experts that the researchers have dealt with in the topic. Next slide, sir, please. Okay. Now, from where should the research scholar try to get the review of literature? So there are two important sources from which a researcher can review sources. One is the primary source and the other is the secondary source. So what is a primary source? A primary source is anything that gives you direct evidence about the people, events or phenomena that the scholar is researching. Primary sources will usually be the main objects of your analysis. So if you're researching the past, you cannot directly access it yourself. So you need primary sources that were produced at the time by participants or witnesses. For example, you get these primary sources from letters, photographs, and even newspapers. So if you're researching, for example, on something current, your primary sources can either be qualitative or quantitative data that you collect yourself through. This can be done through interviews, surveys, experiments, or sources produced by people directly involved in the topic, like for example from official documents or even media texts. Now, what are secondary sources? A secondary source is anything that describes, interprets, evaluates, or analyzes information from primary sources. A few examples include books, articles, documentaries that synthesize information on a topic. Even synopsis and descriptions of artistic works, encyclopedias and textbooks that summarize information and ideas, and also reviews and essays that evaluate or interpret something. So when you cite a secondary source, it is usually not to analyze it directly. Instead, you will probably test its arguments against new evidence or use its ideas to help formulate your own. So next slide, sir. So scholars, so it is mandatory, the scholars have to emphasize more on primary resources for their literature review. Now, writing reviews of literature, especially for social and behavioral sciences. So for social and behavioral sciences, review of literature, as I said, is written using primary, that is original sciences of information. So primary sources, as I had explained in the previous slide, are reports of empirical research published in academic journals. So there are 4 types of materials which are found in journals. Let me discuss that with you. So the first, theoretical articles. So what is a theory? So theory is a general explanation of why variables work together, how they are related to each other, and how they influence each other. So your job in reviewing literature will be made easier if you identify the major theories that apply to your topic of interest. So writers of empirical research reports often identify underlying theories and discuss whether the results are consistent with them. You might choose to build your literature review around one or more theories too. The topic for a literature review might be to review the research relating to a theory. Next slide, sir, please. Next slide, sir. Okay. The next point is literature review articles. So review articles must be well written. That will give readers up to date on what is known about a given topic. These insights may actually take various forms, like for example, resolving conflicts among studies that previously seemed to contradict each other and identifying new ways to interpret results on a topic, and it also should lay out a path for future research, for the future researchers to move on. Next slide, sir. So anecdotal reports. The third one is anecdotal reports. So what does that mean? So anecdotal reports, so as you review the literature on a specific topic, you may encounter articles built on anecdotal accounts of personal experience. So anecdote is a description of an experience that happened to be noticed. Anecdotal accounts are most common in journals aimed at practicing professionals such as clinical psychologists, social workers, and teachers. For example, a teacher might write a journal article describing his or her experience with a severely underachieving student who bloomed academically while in that teacher's classroom. Other teachers may find this interesting and worth reading as a source of potential ideas. So it is just a recollection of personal experiences. So anecdotal reports should be used sparingly in literature reviews, and when they are cited, they should be clearly labeled as anecdotal. The fourth one is reports on professional practices and standards. Some journals aimed at practicing professionals publish reports on practice and standards, such as newly adopted curricula, standards of, for example, mathematics instruction, or proposed legislation to allow clinical psychologists to prescribe drugs. So when something new has been introduced in a particular field, people tend to write reports. For example, as I said, a new curriculum in mathematics, or even when a pharmacies or pharmaceutical companies, they would like to endorse their product. So when these types of issues are relevant to a topic being reviewed, they may merit the discussion in a literature review. So all these four kinds which I just discussed can be used to review literature. The next slide, sir, please. Yeah, the next one is the writing process. So now you have decided on your topic, and also you have also gone through some literature that can be reviewed for your topic. Now the process of writing has to be initiated or used for writing your literature review. So whereas English teachers, we make use of this writing process when we teach our students paragraph writing. So similarly, this simple process can be used when you're writing your literature review. So the first one is to locate, read, and analyze literature before a review can be written. So locate it from the databases, read it thoroughly, analyze whatever literature has been given there before you start writing. And this involves many steps, as I just said. First one is planning. So you define the topic and select the literature for review. So you analyze, synthesize, and evaluate the articles being reviewed. So when you do that, you are actually organizing your review of literature. So when you complete writing the first draft of the review, you have drafted. Then when you check the drafts for completeness, if nothing or if anything has been left out, then you also check for this cohesion and correctness, which we usually follow in writing. Then you have edited. Finally, you redraft it. So you read it once again, and if anything has been left out, you rewrite the draft. So these are the simple steps that a researcher has to follow when he or she starts writing the literature. Okay, the next one, writing a literature review chapter for a thesis or dissertation. So conducting a literature review is one of the steps you will follow in the process of defining the research questions for your study. So the topic has to be redefined and the research questions have to be revised several times. So these are the frequent questions which are asked by the students writing literature review. Two important questions. How many research articles must I write? How long should I make the review? So these two questions, the researchers, the new researchers, they have. These are the frequent questions which they pose to their supervisor. How many research articles they must go through to write for their literature review, and also the length of the review. So, in fact, there is no minimum or either the number of research articles to review or on the length of review that you can, there is no limit for the number of articles that you can review or the length or the length that you can write. So, these standards regarding this matter will also vary depending on the future of the topic and the amount of literature on it. So the two main goals for a literature review are to provide a comprehensive and up-to-date review of the topic, to demonstrate that you have a thorough command of the field you are studying. So whichever topic you have chosen, say that you have a good knowledge on the particular topic. So this passion or this kind of command that you have on the particular topic that you have chosen will help you study the many articles that have been written on that topic. So you also have to keep in your mind that literature review will provide the basic rationale for your research. It will also reflect the seriousness of the task you have undertaken, which is to contribute to the body of knowledge in your field. So this is the first step, the literature review. So this helps you to build and strengthen your argument in the thesis. Now some students, they actually procrastinate, they delay when it comes to writing a literature review chapter for a thesis or dissertation. This is because they do not know how to proceed, how to go about it, writing a literature review. I told you, I shared my own experience. So even I had this problem of how to write a literature review. Then afterwards, one day when I started reading on the advice of my supervisor, many research articles, and only when I started going through many databases, data pertaining to my research topic, I did find a lot of materials or lot of articles which I could actually bring in my research topic. So it is important for scholars to set deadlines for themselves and plan an informal timeline in collaboration with the supervisor. So this is since literature review is very important for the scholar to go about pursuing his or her research. So I suggest that a frequent discussions with the supervisor will help to will help the scholar to go about searching for the appropriate literature review on the topic. So the next slide, sir, please. Okay. Then, writing a literature review for a research article. So this is not, I discussed with you just how to write a research article for a thesis or a dissertation. Now, how to write a literature review for a research article. Since it is a journal article, it can be shorter and more focused. So these literature reviews written for research articles are short and more focused, because Why? Why it has to be short and why it has to be more focused? Because their purpose is to provide the background and rationale for specific and narrow the research project. So research articles submission for refereed journals are evaluated by 2 or 3 of the leading scholars in the area in which the research was conducted. So all of us are aware of this. So those who have written articles or those who are getting inputs from their scholars will know that when you send your paper for publication, there is the process taken by the reviewers to go through your research paper. So it is for this purpose that you have to be very careful when you are planning your literature review, because that is the main strength of your entire thesis. Okay, so it is your paper when you send for publication, it is gone through a panel of reviewers. So you have to be very careful when you write your literature review. So this means that the literature review should reflect the current state of research on the topic. So you have to make sure that you have incorporated all the recent literature on the topic. You have to strengthen your topic by providing the latest or by incorporating the latest literature reviews on the topic. So you should search the latest issues of the journals in your field to make sure that your literature review cites the latest work published on your topic. For example, if you go back, you're pursuing your research maybe just last year, or you're just beginning in this year, 2021. So if you go back, to what was done in 1979 or even in 1980. So I don't say that it is wrong, to review the literature given during those years, but it is always advisable to look for literature which is, very latest, where, you find the most recent articles on your particular topic. That will strengthen your research topic too. So, in other words, the introduction to the research is an essay that introduces readers to both the topic and the purpose of the research while providing an overview of the relevant literature. Therefore, the emphasis of the review should be on establishing the scientific context in which a particular study was conducted, and how it contributes to the field. It should also help to demonstrate the rationale for the original research reported in the article. So it is much more narrow and focused than a literature review chapter for a thesis or dissertation. So this is the main difference. The literature that you write for an article as well as for or an article as well as for a dissertation or a thesis. Okay. The next important point is selection of a topic and then identifying the literature for it. So selection of a topic itself, for the novel researchers, it is, what can I say, it involves, lot of thinking and planning. If the scholar or if the researcher already has in mind, that this is what he or she is going to take up for the research, then it's fine. It is only with the more discussions with the supervisor or the guide that it is finally finalized. So an ELT research or a literature. So many researchers or many scholars, who are working or who have just completed their PG program, they will be having, some particular topic in their mind, with which they would, have lot of interest also to pursue. Now, this is what exactly I'm going to discuss now. Now, the first question that any researcher will have regarding selecting a topic is, where should I begin? That is, the researcher or the scholar, who has no idea on what topic he or she has to select, the first question that will come to their mind is, where should I begin? Okay. So in any type of literature review, I can say that the researcher should narrowly define the topic. So let me explain with an example. The topic, child language acquisition, is a very general topic. I repeat, child language acquisition is a very general topic, but represents a very extensive body of literature. This topic has to be narrowed down before it can be used as the basis for a literature review. So child language acquisition is a very general topic, but it has to be narrowed down if it has to be used as a basis for literature review. So I will discuss the steps, that is 14 steps which are involved for selecting a topic and identifying literature for review. The first step is search an appropriate database. Yesterday, Dr. Ratna was actually giving you many inputs on the different databases that the scholars can use for their research. So just try to recollect that, and I will also be touching on some of these. So before a database is selected and searched, a general topic has to be selected. For example, you can say in ELT research, I want to do on writing. So when you take writing, what is it that you want to do in writing? You're going to use technology, or whether you're going to use a very conventional type. What is your observation in the class as a when you are a teacher, or what problems you faced when in writing when you were a student? So analyze maybe these experiences that you had in your classroom, or even when you were a student, will help you also to choose your topic. For example, I will also share my personal experience. My topic was on writing. My PhD research topic was on writing, technical writing. All right. So as a teacher having more than 25 years of experience, I had observed students, who had difficulty in writing, their writing styles. So since I was working in an engineering college, I narrowed down my topic and I decided it would be on technical writing using technology. Because, it was also, when I started in 2009, when I registered for the PhD program, so I felt that, using technology will be more appropriate rather than a conventional type of teaching. So, for that, what did I do? I searched appropriate databases from where I could get, or where I could, zero in on good topics or good research articles, which will be a strong base for my research topic. Okay, so before a database is selected and searched, a general topic has to be selected. I just gave you that example. It is the topic given in the above example will yield more references. The topic I gave was when I was referring. That I mentioned was child language acquisition. That was a topic I gave you, and then I reverted back to sharing my own experiences. Now, it is suitable to start the general topic, see how much literature exists on it, and then narrow it to a manageable one. So, you have to see how much information you get on the topic that you have chosen, and then you can fine-tune it accordingly and see which topic will be more appropriate for your research. A general search using the topic in the example, that is child language acquisition, will yield thousands of records. A specified set of parameters will give a focused result. For instance, the search can be limited to journal articles, or it can also be specified to a limited range of publication dates going back even to 5 to 7 years. So, for each article identified by the database, an excerpt of the abstracts, that is a brief summary, will be given. So, if you go through the databases like ERIC, you will find that a brief summary is also given on the topic that you are looking for. The second step is shorten your reference list if it is too long. So, hello? Yeah, okay. So, 5 possible revised topics were found in the database, okay, on the sample ERIC. ERIC search for this topic on child language acquisition. Like there were many, like for example, disorders affecting language acquisition, role of parents in child language acquisition in infancy, language acquisition specifically limited to Spanish speaking children, acquisition of grammatical structures and categories. So there were so many, okay, but you have to examine them carefully for subsets that might serve as a topic for your literature review. So you have to, be very careful when you are looking out for the literature review on the topics. Then, if 5 areas are not sufficient for your purpose, so then you have to move on to step 3. That is, increasing the size of your reference lists. So, if you do not have enough references for your literature review, you can search further back. You can find additional references too by clicking on the link that contains the author's names. So, you might get additional information or additional references written by the same author, including research reports and journal articles. So, from these related topics, you can conduct a research of articles on these topics, increasing the size of your reference list by identifying additional related articles. So, dear participants or dear scholars, I could say, when you are trying to write an article, so most probably the database that you would refer to is the Google Scholar. So, when you type the search word or the topic or the title of the article which you want to have more information, you will find, you will find that there are similar words of the author with the citations. So, that is what I was telling you now, increasing the size of your reference list. So, when you have zeroed in on one particular author, and when you want to read his article, you will find, similar articles written by the same author or even other authors. It could be in large numbers. So, in this way, you can increase the size of your reference list. The fourth one is consider searching for unpublished studies. So, this is very difficult. That is searching for unpublished studies. So, how do you go about it? This is another way to increase the size of your reference list. And there are many reasons why some studies are not published. And the reasons could be because some journal editors or experts may be biased. So, this bias will prevent them from publishing the researchers or scholars' studies in their journals. This is one of the reasons. And how can you locate these unpublished articles? So, unpublished articles you can locate by contacting the authors of published studies or ask them if they are aware of any unpublished studies on your topic. So this is, I repeat this point because this is very important. So how will you know that? Because mostly you find only the published studies which you find in the databases. But how to go about the unpublished studies? And the researcher might want more literature on the topic that he or she has chosen, and does not know if some research or some article has already been published on that particular topic. What he or she can do is to contact authors of published studies and ask them if they are aware of any published studies on your topic. So that is one way. And another way is to search electronic databases via the internet. So these are the two possible ways in how you can identify unpublished studies on your topic. Okay. Now the fifth point is write the first draft of your topic statement. Okay. So now that you have identified appropriate references, you can re-examine the list of articles you have generated and choose a more specific topic for your literature review. So after identifying appropriate references, you can re-examine the list of articles you have generated and choose more specific topic for your literature review. So if you have searched, articles, if you are keen on pursuing on writing, you have to try to collect, more articles or what the researchers have already written on the writing skills, at the tertiary level or the primary level or the school level, whichever you want to pursue. And collecting these articles, you have to specify the topic. Okay. So the first draft of your topic statement should attempt to name the area you will investigate. So in the statement itself, you should try to bring out on which area you want to pursue your research. Again, one more example I'll give you. So, for example, this is, I'll just give you an example from the area of psychology, that is language acquisition by children with speech disorders, and the topic in the area of linguistics. Two examples is acquisition of grammatical structures and categories. So this can be further narrowed down. These two topics which I just mentioned now can be further narrowed down by restricting it to a particular group, such as very young children. Example, language acquisition by very young children with special disorder. It depends on the search words, that you are going to use, to find out more review on it. Then, sixth point, familiarize yourself with online databases, especially Google Scholar. So though you find a number of online databases, the most popular sought after database by the scholars is the Google Scholar. So because most students, they find this Google Scholar very helpful, as database coverage is immense. So it is vast. You find many articles in Google Scholar on many different areas of specialization. So Google Scholar links students to whatever library database includes the full text on the campus network. So even while inside your campus, you can, or at your home, you can access to a number of articles that you want from Google Scholar, and some articles which are paid from paid journals, you might not able to view, or you might not be able to download because it will not give you access and you have to pay for them. But mostly you will find otherwise you just for those paid journals or for articles which you have no access, you might only get the abstracts. So if you find it interesting, then you can go for a payment to get the full text of the article. Otherwise, you might get many articles related to that particular search word with which you are trying to look for, So each entry includes a cited by link. This you find there in the Google Scholar, a cited by link, which allows students to view other related articles that cite the reference. So you'll find other related articles when you look out for one particular article. So the minute you click that, you get many articles. So whichever is relevant to you, that you can read or take a printout or save on your desktop for further reading. So the next step, step number 7, identify the relevant databases in your field of study. So now for this, your supervisor or your guide will be the best person to refer to databases in your major, as every academic field has developed its own database services which are used by its students and scholars. So a few examples are, ProQuest, ExpoHost, these databases will be very helpful, when you want to pursue or when you want to find more topics pertaining to your research. Then you can also find out where they are available and whether they can be accessed from your home. For example, American Library. So when I was a scholar for MPhil as well as for my PhD, I used to frequent the American Library because I got, many sources of information, and I refer to many databases, for my research articles which was very helpful for my dissertation. And why I mentioned American Library, because I had very good experiences in the American Library, because the staff are not only friendly, and the charges are very minimal. Just now it is 400. Before it was just 200 rupees. So on the payment of this, the scholars can, they can. Previously it was like that, where they give you some identification number or some login ID with which you can log in at the convenience of your home or at your workplace and access to many new or the latest. They have a number of databases. But now, that facility is not available, and the scholars or the members, they have to be inside the library and access from inside the library. So that you have to decide. So you have to decide whether which database is available and whether you can access it from your home. Step 8, familiarize yourself with the organization of the database. So the online databases contain abstracts of several kinds of documents, including journal articles, books, conference presentations, project reports, and government documents. So you find so much information in the online databases, like documents, journal articles, books, even conference presentations, and even project reports and the documents pertaining to the government. So for journal articles in these databases, there is a single record with specific information about the article. So you can narrow the scope of a search by manipulating one or more of these fields. So in whichever field you want to have articles or you want to download the articles, you can. So the next step will be to begin with a general description, then limit the output. Okay, so you should begin a search with general descriptor. So what is descriptor? It is a word or expression to describe or identify something. That is what I mean by description. From the databases like Thesaurus. And what is Thesaurus? I hope all of you know. So that is a book that contains lists of words and phrases with similar meanings. So you should begin a search with general descriptor from the databases Thesaurus. So if a Thesaurus is not available, then you can use a label or phrase that describes the topic you are investigating. So another effective technique is to limit the search to descriptors and that appear in only the title and or the abstracts. So this is about how you begin the general description and then limit the output. So step 10 is on redefining, on how to redefine the topic more narrowly. The topic should be redefined narrowly because broad topics will stretch the limits of your energy and time. So you'll end up spending more energy, more time, and you might lose interest, or you might what can I say? You might really lose your interest. You'll get bored. You'll get irritated. So or frustrated. So you have to redefine it more narrowly. So after working on your paper for a while, you are most likely to discover aspects you didn't initially think of. So you should therefore be open to revising your topic. So that is very important. All right. Then the next point, start with the most current research and work backward. So the most effective way to begin a research in a field that is new to you is to start with the most current journal articles. So new journal articles. So bibliography in these journal articles will provide useful clues about how to pursue your review of literature. That is the references or the bibliography or the work cited that is given at the back or at the end of the article. So this will give you many useful clues on how you have to pursue a review of literature. So you can refer to that particular author's work, and then you can also try to find more articles with the same author on the same topic. Okay. And then, so you also can obtain articles relevant to your research topic and photocopy the reference list. So this is required of every researcher. So you have to not only save the journal articles that you have referred to either in your computer, or you can also photocopy it, because it is always very useful when you have to cite or when you have to refer it in the work cited at the end of your article. So make strategic decisions about rounding your reading list. So when you read, you have at the same time you have to also take notes and see that you have saved every word or every knowledge that you have gained from the article or the journal that you have read. Then two important criteria to be kept in your mind for developing your reading list. There are two important things that you have to bear in your mind to develop the reading list. One is you should present the extent of knowledge about the topic. This is what I told you just now. So you write down either that is, see, I always advise in my students or even my scholars to write down instead of just taking the photocopies. So because when you write down, actually you remember what you have read. It stays in your mind for a long time, because when you photocopy it, you might just keep it aside. When you have read, and when you have written it on a piece of paper, you might definitely recollect what you have written. This is one thing. So you should represent the extent of knowledge about the topic and also provide a proper context for your own research if you're writing a literature review as a part of an introduction to a research study you will be conducting. So these are the two important points that you have to remember when you are reading. For reading and taking down the reading down the notes that you have made for the literature review. Then the next one is searching for theoretical articles on your topic. So theoretical articles, it is theory, the use of theory on the research. So no research article is complete without writing theories, be it literature or be it ELT. So theories, you have to apply theories for your article. So you have to find out which suitable theory you can use for your article. So you have to search for theoretical articles on your topic. So these articles that relate directly to your topic should be included in your literature review. It could be a constructivist theory, or it could be Stephen Krashen's theory, anything. So but you have to mention that in your literature review which theory you are using. Then writers of empirical research, reports will discuss the relationship of the study to theoretical literature and provide references to this literature. So theories play a very major role in your research. So you should follow these leads by looking up the references. So when you go to the references column, and when you're reading an article thoroughly, you have to look out for theories and which one will be suitable to be employed, or which you can use for your research. Then the 13th step is look for review articles. So previously published review articles are very, very useful in planning a new literature review, because they are helpful in identifying the breadth and scope of the literature in a field of study. And then if you know the names of journals in your field, the published reviews, you might specify their names in the database research. For example, the 3L or the ELT journal, the Oxford journal. So this all, it pertains to English language teaching and literature. So if you are aware of these, the names of these journal titles, then you can type it in the database, and you can actually go through many, and you can review many articles. So this will restrict your search to just these journals. So you don't have to also waste a lot of time, but you will get a plethora of information from these journals. The last step in selecting a topic is identifying the landmark or classic studies and theorists. Theorists like, for example, Chomsky or Skinner or Krashen or Vygotsky, so many theorists in ELT and literature. So it is important to identify the landmark studies and theorists on your topic. So who are the theorists? All right. Whose theory you are going to adopt for your research? All right. So what are the so many studies or so many reviews you have seen, so many reviews of literature you have gone through. So which are the particular reviews that you have sidelined for your research topic, and whose theory you are going to adopt? So you have to identify that. So this is a very important step. Without a knowledge of landmark studies, you will not understand the present context of your chosen topic. So if you do not have a working knowledge of the latest studies, then you will not understand what to do or how to go about your research area, how to go about in your specialization that you have chosen. If you're writing a thesis or a dissertation in which exhaustive reviews are expected, a failure to reference the landmark studies might be regarded as a serious flaw. So journal article, you might somehow try to manage and get it published. But when you are writing a dissertation or a thesis, you have to be very careful. Your thesis will not be evaluated. It cannot be accepted if you have not mentioned the theories and how you have adopted your method accordingly. So it would be considered a very serious flaw if you do not know how to reference and landmark the studies. Fine. And then coming to the most common mistakes that can be avoided by the researcher. So the first one will be sources in your literature review do not clearly relate to the research problem. So in your literature review, you have mentioned some sources, but it has no standing at all to your research problem. So this is one mistake. And then you have not spent sufficient time to identify the most relevant sources to use in the literature review related to the research problem. So your area will be different, but you might have given a different literature review. Why? This is because you have not given lot of time. So this could also be one reason which you have to definitely avoid. The next one, it relies exclusively on secondary analytical sources than on primary study. So in the beginning I told you that it is the primary source which the researcher has to lay his eyes upon. And it is from this primary source that the researcher has to collect the data. So if more weightage, more weightage should not be given to the, you can, but you have to balance it. Balance it in the sense more focus should be only on the primary sources of information rather than the secondary sources or secondary source data. Okay. Next slide, sir, please. Okay. Then uncritically accepts another research findings and interpretations as valid rather than examining critically all aspects of the research design and analysis. So the researcher sometimes, you just think that when you read the article, so this that article could also be similar to yours. You just accept the findings without a second thought. Okay, so the same research design also might be copied by the researcher. All right, so this should not happen. So this mistake also has to be avoided. And it does not describe the search procedures that were used in identifying the literature to review. So what were the procedures that were adopted to identify the appropriate review? That is sometimes missed out. So this mistake also has to be avoided and includes only that research that validates assumptions and does not consider contrary findings and alternative interpretations found in the literature. So only what is found at that in that article is referred to without considering that there are other possibilities. So this is also one mistake that the researchers often make. Yeah. Next slide, sir, please. Okay. Now, finally, I will just end my presentation by giving a few tips for writing an effective literature review. So, especially in social sciences, thinking about research problems from multiple vectors is a key strategy. So, there are many avenues. So, don't restrict or don't confine to just one. So, for finding new solutions to a problem or gaining a new perspective. So, try to analyze or try to venture on some new multiple options. So, consult with your librarian because he might be aware of the latest databases or the latest books because they often get catalogs, they get the reference list. So, the librarian is the best person whom you can consult with regarding to the databases and also the books that is available in your field and also with the supervisor too. And identifying research databases in other disciplines. Almost every field of study has at least one comprehensive database devoted to indexing its research literature. As I mentioned, you have ProQuest, you have EBSCOhost, and so many databases. Okay. No? And then the next one is don't just review for content. All right. Just don't scan only to see what is written. Don't just review your article for that. So some questions that you have to ask yourself, how are they organizing their ideas? Who? That is the authors who have written. How have they organized their ideas? Read that. What methods have they used to study the problem? So they would have adopted some methodology. Okay. So what is that? What methodology would they have used? And how you can also use a different strategy for your problem, for your research problem. What theories have been used to explain, predict, or understand the research problem? So no research dissertation or a research article is complete without a theory. So you have to find, what theories the authors have used to explain or predict or understand the research problem. Then what sources have they cited to support their conclusions? Then have they used non-textual elements, for example, like charts, graphs, figures to illustrate key points, especially for ELT research, you go for statistical analysis. Though it is not much used in the field of literature, especially for ELT research, statistical analysis plays a key role. So you also have to see how these authors have used the charts and graphs to bring out or to explain their concepts. Next slide, sir, please. Okay, so this is the book that I also referenced for this presentation. Next, sir. Yeah. So I think with this, yes, I come to the end of my presentation. I know it has been a long time from this nearly 8:20. So I'll stop with that. And I wish all the budding researchers who have just taken baby steps or who are in research or who are already pursuing their research, this presentation I think will give you a clear picture on how to write your review of literature very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insightful session and your details on the step-by-step process of writing literature review and some of the important FAQs and your answers for that, and how you distinguished between the literature review for writing the thesis and then the research papers. And definitely all these things, the do's and don'ts for writing the literature review, all these things definitely would be beneficial for the researchers. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
And that is a question from Siva Subramanian. Most of the researchers attend literary review as a mere ritual. What do you think about it, ma'am? He has asked.
No, it is not a ritual. It is not a ritual. As I was mentioning again and again, you have to have an in-depth study. Lot of referencing has to be done. It cannot be a ritual. As I said, in my common mistakes that are made, and not to read. In the last slide, if you see, not to read just for the content's sake. It is not a ritual. So a lot of reading goes into it before you write an effective review of literature.
And Mr. M.S. Siddharth Prabhu has asked, for the PhD students, what is the advised time by which we should stop reading the latest works and concentrate on writing the dissertation?
Mr. Siddharth, I would say that, there is no time limit, because even I personally feel that, your guide will be the better advisor on this, but there is no limit for the to access or to search for the latest reviews for your research topic. So even the recently, even if you have actually mentioned or if you have written a literature review which you have referred recently, it is not, still it is advisable to mention the latest review that you have read. So I don't think, that you have to restrict or confine yourself with what you have written before you submit your thesis. So if it takes even a few years to submit your, a few months, or maybe I can say even 1 or 2 months before you are going to submit your thesis or dissertation, even if you have come across any latest thesis, any latest review on the topic, I'm sure you can include that. So that will carry more weightage to your thesis, and also you would have gained tremendous knowledge too by referring to the journal article.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Saranya has asked, how should we validate the secondary source? How do we know if a secondary source is authentic, she has asked. Is it necessary to check the primary source? That's the question.
Okay. How do we know if a secondary source is authentic? So I told you that there are various, I gave you examples somewhere you can actually look for secondary sources. So that itself, when you are going to cite these secondary sources from whichever book or whichever newspaper or whichever article you have read, you have to validate that in your research. Maybe you can refer that in your article or in your dissertation by citing it. So it should be true because it is in a book which has been published, or it is from a standard newspaper, So definitely this has no, this can be acknowledged, because it is not, you are not just trying to validate or refer in your thesis as if it has been said by someone. You have actually read it, so it should be an authentic information.
Thank you, ma'am. I think these are the questions given by the participants, and thank you once again for your explanation. And dear participants, thank you for your patience, your interest, and your interaction with the resource persons. And with this, we will end the third day. And tomorrow, on day 4, you have 2 more resourceful sessions. Session 1, the topic is Framework for Publishing in Scholarly Journals by Dr. Divya John, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Assistant College of Engineering. And session 2 is addressed by Dr. S. Vijay Kumar, Assistant Professor, P.S. Abdul Rahman, President, Institute of Science and Technology, on the topic, The Subtle Art of Writing a Research Proposal. Definitely, you would be more benefited on these 2 sessions, which is going to be conducted tomorrow on day 4. And thank you again. Looking forward to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear participants.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a very informative session.